diet, how much you should eat, and portion size. Really, it depends how hungry you are. If you're really starving and you really have a big appetite, you can go and eat a lot of food. You've probably all noticed that at some stage in your life. Christmases, celebrations, birthdays. I definitely know I have. Sometimes it's pretty rarely, but I can still go and get a box of 12 donuts and eat them. And the only reason I can get away with it is because I do a lot of exercise. But it's also something that is not common, and it definitely shouldn't be common because the more you eat is putting a load on your system, a strain on your system. And unless you're growing, there's little reason to really eat big amounts of food. So we have standard measurements in every culture for portions. For example, if you're having breakfast, you might have a bowl of cereal, two wheat bix or a bowl of cornflakes, two pieces of toast. We've arranged a system over hundreds of years now where there are portions that are set out for different meals, and they're usually pretty good at estimating roughly how much or how many nutrients are in those portions. So it's a good rule of thumb. It's not particularly accurate, but it takes a lot of the guesswork out. And people are busy, and it's not super important for a lot of people in the world, to be honest. So I think that the portions coming from standard measurements is actually not a bad way to diet. It works for pretty much everybody I know without fail. And provided they don't have any conditions or some underlying genetic issue, it's a good gauge. A more advanced way of looking at how much you should eat would be through caloric or joule estimates, so diet by numbers basically. It is getting easier because a lot of products these days will have the joule and caloric amounts on the packaging, so you can calculate how much you are eating over the course of the day. I find this to be the way that I do everything because I have grown up as a scientist, and it works very well for me to see exactly how much I need to put in for how much I'm putting out. Especially we can see these days with Fitbits and Apple Watches and other devices and apps how much we're putting out, albeit quite loosely. You shouldn't totally take it as the most accurate source in the world, but it's not too bad. So there's a lot of tips and tricks that I'll give on that in the more advanced videos for dieting. It's something that I find is extremely interesting and quite cutting edge these days. Finally, I left it last because it's something that most people who haven't worked in healthcare, especially youth, will find quite gross and disgusting, but sadly some truth will be told in the toilet. You'll find if your portion size is too large and has especially too much protein or fats in it, your body will realize this and will purge it. And when it purges it or bilges it like when you're fishing, it means that you'll get diarrhea, which is something that is quite unpleasant, especially if it's for an extended period of time, and can be something that you should try and avoid. So if you're eating a lot of food and you're not processing it, or you're not doing extreme amounts of exercises for your system to handle it, then you'll find that you can get diarrhea from this. So it's a good idea to wind back your caloric intakes when you get to that point. It's funny because it was something that didn't dawn on me so much until I started raising puppies. And when you're the responsible diet caretaker for these puppies, you'll see that if you feed them too much, the puppies will always continue eating. Their little piglets. It's very cute, but you've got to be careful because you can do a lot of damage, especially when you're growing, but even when you're fully aged and developed from eating too much. So I didn't like to see my poor little pups getting diarrhea. It was a horrible experience. I was wondering if it was the poor tree frogs that they go after in the yard and try to eat, but in fact it was just for the fact that they've got big eyes and look like they need a lot more food than they do. So like I said, I don't like toilet humor, but there's some truth will be told in the toilet. If you eat too much, it will give you diarrhea. That's it for the time being. It's quite straightforward. We're talking about the frequency or how often you should eat part of the diet. It is pretty common for people to have the 3 meals per day, the standard view. You eat breakfast, you have lunch, you have dinner. That's fine, especially when you're growing up. You should really not hold back as long as you're doing your exercise as well. 3 meals a day is fine, and you can really, as I'm living proof of, you can eat quite a lot and stay lean. You're growing, your body needs a lot of energy, especially proteins to grow and develop. You need a lot of vitamins and minerals when you're growing. So really, if you're young and you're fit and you exercise, then 3 meals a day is fine, and possibly more. Whenever you feel hungry, basically. It does change from person to person. Genetically, we are all different. Some people are harder to fill up, basically, based on their hormones. So 3 meals a day is fine. As I have in the point underneath, it also depends on your lifestyle. So if you're a very active person, you love outdoor sports, you spend a lot of time doing a lot of high intensity activity, rugby players, soccer players, tennis players, swimmers, you name it, like so many professional athletes really burn a lot of calories. So you may need to eat even more frequently. I know people that spend all day eating as athletes, so it does depend on your lifestyle. In the same token, if you're not a very active person, you're a bookworm, you love science and you love sitting at home on your computer, you might find that you only have your 3 meals a day as a kid, or 1 meal a day like I do as an adult, and maybe just have some small snacks in between it. I definitely think that there's evidence pointing towards that that's actually healthy. The old myth, I would call it now, that it's unhealthy not to have breakfast or to skip breakfast, I think is just perpetuating that the view that we have to eat a complete breakfast complete with Kellogg's and cereals and whatnot. I think a lot of it again comes from marketing. So I will make some more points regarding this in upcoming videos. Does frequency make a difference? Sure, it does. Basically, from what I was saying, that the hormonal structure of the human body means that our body responds to hormonal changes based on the frequency of us eating. So